What's up guys, this is Zach with Top Deck Nation, and today we're going to be looking at another post-rotation deck featuring the new cards from Burning Shadows, and that is going to be Gardevoir-GX featuring Octillery and Gallade. So we did do a deck profile recently on this deck just a few weeks ago, but that was a pre-rotation deck, so it was a Primal Clash on standard format deck, and it had a lot of cards that are going to be rotating out soon, such as VS Seeker, Lysander, and Hex Maniac. So this is probably going to be one of the biggest shifts in the format, one of the biggest rotations we've seen in the last couple years. For example, VS Seeker was a staple in pretty much every deck. A lot of decks played Trainer's Mail and Lysander and Hex Maniac, so it's going to be interesting to see how this format goes. I think the format's going to slow down a little bit. Shayminiax is also rotating, but we gain a lot of really good stuff from Burning Shadows, and interestingly enough, I don't think Gardevoir really gets any weaker from the rotation. Actually, I would kind of argue it gets stronger just because you can replace those cards with a lot of consistency cards. You can play a thicker count of Gardevoir, you can play a thicker count of Octillery, thicken up your supporter lines and Rare Candy. So I think Gardevoir is one of those decks that actually benefits from the rotation and gets quite a bit stronger. But I am going to walk you guys through the deck. It is a little bit different compared to the pre-rotation deck. There are some notable changes thanks to the Burning Shadows cards, so I do want to kind of go over those today. So first of all, we have Gardevoir-GX, and that's going to be your main attacker of the deck. It's pretty bulky, it's got 230 HP, and it's got this ability called Secret Spring. So once during your turn before you attack, you may attach a Fairy Energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. So Secret Spring is going to be your go-to ability. It's going to be your way of accelerating energy throughout the game, and it's essentially providing an extra attachment per Gardevoir. So if I am attaching 2 or 3 extra Fairy Energy a turn, I'm attaching DCE, I'm attaching Choice Band, you can see how that damage is really going to be piling up with Infinite Force. Infinite Force says that it does 30 damage times the number of energy attached to both active Pokemon. So that means it's going to be counting your opponent's energy as well. So for example, if you're going against a Volcanion EX deck, let's just say Volcanion EX is active, it's got 3 energy on it, so all you would need to do is hit 180 damage, so 6 energy on the board or 5 energy in a Choice Band. So that's not even really tough if you think about it. Just a manual attachment of a DCE, using Secret Spring to attach a Fairy Energy, you're already hitting that magic number of 180. So Gardevoir can be really annoying to deal with just because it's really easy to pile up energy on it and just take those cheap knockouts. So your opponent has to be really careful. They can't invest too many energy on something because Gardevoir will just kind of return knockout. And the GX attack is actually really solid as well. For a single energy, shuffle 10 cards from your discard into your deck. So this is a hard counter to Trashalanche Garbodor, just because that deck relies on the number of items in your discard. So if I can put 10 of those back into my deck, that Garbodor is not really going to be doing much to any of my Pokemon. It might be doing 20, 40, 60 damage, but definitely not enough to make an impact, especially not on Gardevoir. But at the same time, I will say that the attack is pretty balanced just because it's putting them into your deck and not into your hand. You had Decidueye GX, I think it had Hollow Hunt GX. It's where you put 3 cards from the discard into your hand. So, putting 10 cards back into your deck, it is kind of thickening your deck up a little bit. So you do have to be careful. You probably don't really want to use this until maybe later game. You have a pretty good board state. Maybe you're putting rare candies in so you can evolve some more Gardevoir, whatever you need really. But I think the attack is balanced, but I think it's really strong. So our Gardevoir line is a 4-2-4 line. We're playing 4 rare candies just to make sure we're getting those out, but we're also playing a copy of Gallade. So we're already playing the Ralts and the Kirlia, so Gallade naturally fits into the deck. It attacks for a DCE, so it has some synergy already, but combined with Octillery, it's a pretty deadly combination here. We have Premonition for the ability. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put them back on top of your deck in any order. So, we can rearrange the top 5 cards of our deck, and then Octillery says that once during your turn, you can draw until you have 5 cards into your hand. So you're kind of manipulating those top 5 cards and then drawing as many as you need. So some pretty obvious synergy there, but keep in mind Gallade is a secondary attacker. It doesn't have Secret Spring, so it's not putting that energy on the board. It's not doing quite as much damage as Gardevoir. It's not really going to be taking those one-hit knockouts. So I would say that Gallade is pretty situational. If you can get it out, that's great, but it's not really necessary to the strategy. And recently, I've actually seen a lot of people take out the Gallade in favor of a Ringaroo instead. Ringaroo has that Instruct ability, so draw until you have 3 every turn, so that's not bad. But the attack is doing 60 damage and 20 more for each energy on your opponent's active. So another hard counter to the Alolan Ninetales in Burning Shadows. So this Alolan Ninetales has an ability that says it can't be touched by GXs or EXs. So in this case, either one of them is going to be one-shotting this Ninetales, but a Ringaroo is a little more consistent, I would argue, because you can just Ultra Ball it out, you can bridge it. It's not a stage 2, so that is an option. I have seen a lot of people kind of swap out the Gallade and maybe even take out Octillery altogether, but I think it provides a really solid form of draw support. So if I were going to add a Ringaroo, I would probably take out the Gallade, but I think this version definitely does the job as well. We're also playing 3 copies of Tapu Lele-GX. It's got that Wonder Tag ability. It's going to let you search for a supporter and put it in your hand. And I think Tapu Lele is going to be a staple going forward. I think it's kind of the new Shaman EX, but I think it's a little bit better than Shaman EX just because it's a little bulkier. It's good as a secondary attacker. It's got no weakness. So, I mean, I think Tapu Lele is going to be pretty standard in most decks now, especially because VS Seeker is rotating. So the thicker counts mean you're going to be able to access those supporters a little more frequently throughout the game. And finally, we're playing 2 copies of Alolan Vulpix. Now, there is a bit of a debate in the competitive community right now as to whether you should play Alolan Vulpix or if you should play something like Diancie instead. So I'm not a big fan of Diancie simply because it does require energy to attack. So if I play a Brigette, I get it out and I don't have a Float Stone to retreat the active, I actually have to wait a turn. So in other words, if you're not starting with it, you're already behind a turn using it. And with Alolan Vulpix, it attacks for 0 energy. And I think Beacon is just a really, really strong attack. So if I can Brigette the Alolan Vulpix out, manually retreat or Float Stone into the Vulpix, and just go ahead and Beacon and get exactly what I need. So a lot of times you might search for Gardevoir and Tapu Lele so that next turn you can Wonder Tag and get Skyla for the Rare Candy. So that pretty much guarantees you a turn to Gardevoir right there. But if you already have the Rare Candy in your hand, there's also other options there as well. We have Octillery, we can grab Kirlia if we want to set up another Ralts. So I think Alolan Vulpix is really good. If your opponent knocks it out, not a big deal. It's essentially serving as a 7th prize attacker, and your opponent is still going to have to knock out 3 of those Gardevoir-GX. Now, as far as our supporters go, we're playing a pretty standard count going forward. We're playing 4 Professor Sycamore and 4 N just for consistent draw power, 3 Guzma just because we don't have a way to reuse those anymore. We don't have a way to get them out of the discard, so we have to play a thicker line, and then 1 Brigette and 1 Skyla. So in the early game, the first turn or 2, Brigette is going to be the go-to supporter. It's going to make sure we're getting plenty of Ralts out, maybe our Alolan Vulpix as well. And then, like I said before, Skyla is good to search out things like Rare Candy, maybe the Choice Band if you're short just a little bit of damage. So lots of options, especially when we're playing so many trainer cards in the deck. As far as the items go, we're playing 4 Ultra Ball just to kind of search through our deck, get us whatever we need throughout the game. And it's also really good to thin out our hand so we can use Octillery's Abyssal Hand to draw cards. We're playing 4 Rare Candy just to make sure that we can always get that turn 2 Gardevoir-GX. And if we have to discard a Rare Candy or 2, then we should be fine because we're playing such a thick count of those. We're also going to be playing 2 Field Blower. That's mainly there for the Garbotoxin Garbodor to make sure we have our abilities throughout the game. It's also good against things like Fighting Fury Belt, Choice Band, Float Stone, and just a number of stadiums that are going to continue to be played throughout the format. So I think Field Blower is pretty standard in most decks at this point. We're also going to be playing 2 Choice Band, and as I said, that's just to make sure the math is right. I don't really think you need any more than that because we're already attaching extra energy per turn. DCEs count as 2 energies, so a lot of times you might just be short 20 or 30 damage or so, and then Choice Band is going to make sure that math, that you're hitting those magic numbers and getting those knockouts. We're also going to be playing 2 Float Stone, and that's really there just as a way to manually retreat out if we need to. If they Guzma out the Octillery, I really don't want to have to waste a DCE or 2 Secret Spring attachments to Octillery, so Float Stone is there just in case. And you never know, you may use it on something like Tapu Lele, maybe retreat out of the Vulpix once you've used Beacon, so lots of options there. And finally, we're doing a split between Rescue Stretcher and Super Rod. So I like Rescue Stretcher a lot just because of that first effect, being able to put that Pokemon into your hand. So if you have to discard a Gardevoir, the Rescue Stretcher is kind of acting like a way to get that Gardevoir back. It's kind of like you didn't really discard the Gardevoir, or any Pokemon for that matter. But in other situations, you want to get those energy back in the deck to make sure we can continually use that Secret Spring ability. So I think Super Rod does the job in that regard. And finally, we're going to be playing 11 energy, so we're playing 7 Fairy and 4 DCE. So like I said, I think 7 energy is a pretty healthy count. I believe the person that won the Japanese championships this past summer, he played 6 Fairy, 1 Wonder Energy, and 4 DCE. So I think Wonder Energy is rotating out, so that's unfortunate. But I think 7 Fairy energy should do the job just fine. But that is going to wrap up the list, guys. Overall, this deck is really, really consistent going forward. I would probably argue that it's the best deck overall in the format going forward in the Burning Shadows rotation. It's just got so much going for it. It's really aggressive. It's easy to set up thanks to that beacon with Alolan Vulpix. And I think you're going to be seeing this at a lot of tournaments looking ahead. But with that said, let's jump into a game I recently played on Pokemon Trading Card Game Online, and you can see the deck in action. Okay guys, we are going to go ahead and get started here with this commentary match. So looking at my opening hand, I'm actually in pretty good shape here. I've got Ralts, I've got Remoraid to set up for the Octillery the following turn, but most importantly I have a way to get Brigette. So I can retreat the Ralts into the Vulpix, assuming I don't have the Vulpix or Brigette prized, and I should be able to get that turn 1 beacon, which is what we're always hoping for with this deck. So I'm in really good shape here. So I'm going to go ahead and use Tapu Lele, use that Wonder Tag ability, just kind of searching to make sure what's prized and everything. It looks like everything is pretty much there. Looks like I might have prized the DCE, but that shouldn't be too much of a concern. Maybe a couple Fairy energy. So I'll have to be a little bit more conservative, not try to discard those resources. So I am going to go ahead and retreat and go ahead and beacon. And as far as what I need, I think I should get Octillery for sure, and then maybe either Kirlia or the Gardevoir, but I don't really have a way to get the Gardevoir out. I don't have Rare Candy. My bench is full, so I'd have to kind of depend on my opponent on knocking out Vulpix so I could get Skyla. So I think this is probably the best play here. And I can always thin down my hand, and maybe I can get the Rare Candy or something anyway, so that is an option. And this is why I think Octillery is really the optimal build compared to Diancie and some other options that draw support every single turn of the game. Being able to thin your hand out consistently, drawing 3 or 4 cards every turn, eventually you just kind of outpace your opponent, and they're going to have to concede because they just can't keep up with it. So I play the in, or he plays the in, I should say. I see a couple Rare Candies, so technically maybe I could Skyla the Tapu Lele and get an Ultra Ball maybe. But I don't know if that's the best play to go with going forward. So I'm going to promote Tapu Lele. My logic is that maybe I can just kind of sit behind Tapu Lele, hit with it, maybe 2-shot my opponent as I get these Ralts set up. That in was pretty disruptive. That's really the only downside to the beacon version, just because when you're using beacon, it could get end away. But oftentimes you'll get into pretty much what you need anyway, so it's not a big deal. But I'm going to go ahead and probably Ultra Ball, get the Octillery, make sure I've got my draw support out for the rest of the game. I've got a Gardevoir actually, so I'm in pretty good shape there. But I'm going to go ahead and draw 5 cards, and it looks like I might have whiffed some energy. So I think I'll just attach to Gardevoir, maybe set it for a 1-hit knockout next turn, assuming I can get maybe another Gardevoir out, or just anything that can help me get a bunch of energy on the board. So it is going to be my opponent's turn again. This is a Salazzle Garbodor deck. I've never even seen this deck. This is the first time I've played against it. I guess his goal of the deck is to kind of 2-shot your opponents, maybe trade knockouts. I think Salazzle's GX attack, I want to say it discards all energy from my active. I'm not completely sure, but I want to say that, or it returns it to the hand or something. So, I mean, I may have to watch out for that just because Gardevoir is going to have a ton of energy on it, so I don't want those discarded, especially not those DCEs that I can't get back. So Tapu Lele, I'm going to go ahead and do that, get Sycamore. I don't know if this is the ideal play. I'm going to discard 2 Rare Candy, but I really need to draw through cards. I need to get the DCE, I should say, to exchange that knockout. So I get what I needed here. I don't have another Gardevoir to put down, but I think I can get a Kirlia. And as you can see, I'm just slowly powering up the Gardevoir on the bench. No rush because I can attack with Tapu Lele in the meantime. Go ahead and get Kirlia out, so that should be good. And I've got Abyssal Hand again, so there you go. I've probably drawn a good 6-7 cards from Abyssal Hand already. So Tapu Lele is going to hit for a respectable 110. That's how much Salazzle did to me. And at this point, he's probably going to knock me out. He's not enemy. He's not going to Guzma or anything. So he's going to knock out that Tapu Lele. And I'm just going to have to sit here. And unfortunately, if I want to draw a bunch of cards next turn, I have to get rid of all 3 of my Guzmas, which is really, really bad. I don't want to do that. But I may have to just to kind of be aggressive because if he keeps taking these knockouts, eventually I will lose. Let's hope that I get a top deck, maybe top deck an N or something, or maybe I can Abyssal Hand. I don't even know, but looks like I get a Choice Band. But regardless, at least I can take a knockout. Maybe I don't even have to. I'm not even sure if I want to do this or not. Yeah, I'm not even sure. I don't even want to put down that Float Stone because if he uses Field Blower, then he could possibly trap Octillery or something else. So I'm just going to take the knockout. I'm hoping that maybe he'll end me. I would much rather have all of his stuff end. I don't want it discarded. And then suddenly he can just kind of attack and retreat, and I can't do anything about it. So we're going to see a Guzma. And he's going to attack with the Gardevoir. So as long as I've got 4 items in the discard, that'll be a knockout. So it looks like I've got 8 in the discard. So I'm actually managing resources pretty well if you think about it. His Gardevoir is stuck 2-shotting me. And I'm down to 4 prizes at this point. Gardevoir is doing a lot of damage. I'm actually considering using that GX attack because that would basically render that Gardevoir useless because he is doing 160, 180 it looks like right now, but if I put 10 items in the deck, that Gardevoir is doing 0 damage. That is something to consider, but I don't know if I really want to go that route. So we're going to see what happens. We use Sycamore, just kind of looking to see how many resources we've used. Probably want to put some fairy energy back into the deck, as well as maybe like a Gardevoir line or something. But it looks like I'm going to actually opt to put in some energy in Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele might be good later on just in case I want a Guzma, but I think I'm going to go ahead and use Infinite Force. I'm going to try to be aggressive. At this point, I just need to knock out a Salazzle and then a non-EX or GX, so like the Gardevoir, the basic on the bench. So I'm in pretty good shape right now. So he's going to Ultra Ball, and let's see what he gets off of this Ultra Ball here. I think my priority has to be to get that second Gardevoir out so we can continue to attach a couple extra energy per turn. But it wouldn't surprise me. Well, actually, he has Garbotoxin activated, so he can't search for Tapu Lele. He can't use Wonder Tag. He's going to go for the Salazzle, but I think that Garbotoxin is actually hurting him as much as it's hurting me. But I've got a Field Blower. I'm just kind of sparingly waiting to use it. I don't just want to blow it and then he just locks my abilities again. So that's why I can't really use Abyssal Hand either. I'm going to have to just kind of wait it out. But I think I've got the advantage because if Salazzle hits me, I just kind of return knockout. So if I get an energy, I would pretty much win the game, but it looks like I'm just kind of stuck here. So he's only got 2 cards in his hand. Maybe I should just be a little bit aggressive. Regardless, Salazzle can just be knocked out. I don't think he can do 230 damage in a single turn. He's going to play an Ultra Ball, but that pretty much tells me he doesn't have anything. He had a Tapu Lele, but Garbotoxin's activated, so that ability will not work. So he is pretty much top decking right now. He's going to pass. I think all I can do is just continue to be aggressive. I've got energy in my hand. Maybe hold on to it just in case he Lysanders Tapu Lele or something, or maybe attach it to Kirlia just in case he tries to do something there. But I think I just go for a knockout. I mean, I don't think there's anything else I have to do. I can't use supporters or anything. And the GX attack would just kind of thicken my deck up. So I'm going to go ahead and hit. And at this point, I think I'm in really good shape. I've got the Gardevoir. I've got a couple energy just in case he does a Guzma. So I think I've pretty much won the game. You can tell I think he didn't top deck what he needed exactly, but I had the energy for the game the following turn. So there you have it, guys. That is going to be Gardevoir-GX in the post-rotation breakthrough on standard format starting in a few weeks, featuring Octillery and Gallade. So very consistent, very aggressive deck. I love this deck going forward. There's really not a doubt in my mind that it's probably the best deck overall going forward. So if you are looking to get into the game, I would highly recommend it. But let me know in the comments what you think about it. Are there any changes you would make? Are there any more decks to see, or decks that you would like to see? And I am pretty pleased to announce that starting tomorrow, we are actually going to be covering some retro decks. That's right, some old school decks. We're going to be covering some base through jungle and fossil decks. So deck profiles, commentary matches are going to be coming with those, and they're going to slowly be rolled out tomorrow. But let me know what you think about that, guys, which decks you want to see. But in the meantime, this has been Zach with Top Deck Nation. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you on the next one tomorrow.